Great to see everyone. Just before we get into it, I wanted to quickly, firstly, thank the organisers and congratulate them on putting this together. Absolutely extraordinary, and thank the volunteers as well who are doing an amazing job. As noted, I'm one of the partners at Balderton Capital. We're a pan-European venture firm. We've been investing for 25 years across Europe. And we've always believed that incredible global software and non-software companies can be built and scaled in Europe. And about almost exactly 11 years ago, I came to Athens and met a company called Workable in the HR tech space, and we invested. I've been on the board of that company ever since. And that company has built a fantastic business, a global business. Most of their sales are in the US, and it's done out of Athens. Most of the team is still here. The tech team is here. When we met them 11 years ago, they had a machine learning team. This is way before, obviously, the current wave of AI, and they've been iterating on that ever since. And almost 5 years ago, I got introduced to two other founders, one who was half Cypriot and one half Maltese. And they also had an ambition to build a global software company in a really sexy area, actually, CRM. I would beg to differ on that. And we met and we thought, well, that's kind of a bold ambition, but CRM is kind of done, surely. There's some giant companies, there's Salesforce, there's HubSpot. This is going to be difficult. But we met them, and they convinced us. One of those founders was Alex Christie. Hi, Alex.
Hello.
Maybe we can just go back to then, and what possessed you to think that you could build a new type of CRM?
Yeah, I think some amount of naivety was probably important, but in the early days, Nick and I really felt strongly that you could build incredible companies in Europe and in London. We're both very proud Europeans. Like you said, we're both from immigrant families to the UK. I'm Cypriot, Nick's Maltese. And we knew from our own experience that there is incredible talent in London, that these US companies that we all revere, a large portion of them are building in London or in Europe. They have these big engineering and marketing offices. So we felt really strongly that it could be done. And we felt that actually the CRM space was being attacked quite badly by these American companies, that the way they thought about product and the development cycle that exists, particularly in San Francisco and models like Y Combinator, where you're iterating super quickly, it's really hard to build a great business in a really hard space. Owana was just talking about robotics. We're doing CRM. Admittedly, it sounds less hard. I promise you, it's actually quite hard when you get down to it. There's these big build-outs, and you need to have vision and a long-term roadmap. And if you're in a 6-week scramble to iterate every 2 weeks until you have 1,000 customers, you just can't do it.
Right. And I remember the first couple of years, every board meeting was like, oh, by the way, we actually now need to build this bit as well before we're ready. And then the next board meeting is, oh, there's actually one more bit we need to build.
Yeah, have they stopped being that?
No. But I think we're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there.
What were the kind of principles that you had when you started it? Because, when you're building something with such a long-term vision, and there is a lot of complexity in what you need to build, what were the principles you put down to kind of lay the foundations for that?
I think for us there were kind of 4 things we really believed were foundational to building great software. Some of them have aged better than others, but they're all still true today. And the one that was most important, I think, to talk about in this short time we have is this idea of building a toolkit that your customers use to assemble a solution rather than the solution itself. And I think as we kind of see the rollout of agents and AI more broadly within the B2B world, the customer now has this very intelligent system that can help them configure and set up software. And people are asking, well, should I just get it to build the thing for me? I think the answer to that is still no. There's a lot of complexity to deploying these systems, designing these systems, even knowing what they should and shouldn't do. But there's now a superpower in terms of how configurable they can be. And so even if you were serving what used to be a very non-technical audience, right? There's all kinds of extremes. I spoke to someone earlier building a business in hospitality. These are typically viewed as less technical audiences. But now with tools like ChatGPT and Claude, their ability to configure the tools they use has advanced that much more. And so our role as people building software and building IP is, how can we solve those really hard problems, but expose that configuration to those users who are now using these conversational assistants? And I think that idea, you might remember the memo we sent around originally of everything's going to be a tool in the future. That idea of building tools and now sharing those tools with AI agents and humans, I think is going to be foundational to the next generation of SaaS.
Because when you started, of course, there were no agents, there was no LLMs really, or not the ones that you could use in any sense. So it was all about the Attio as a destination, beautiful UI, incredible speed, configurability, but none of that. How have you kind of navigated both that long-term vision with the kind of incredible pace of change in technology?
I think the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's, the more sophisticated AI systems become, the more they start to look like human users and value the things human users care about. Can you accurately find the thing I'm searching for, whether I'm a human or an AI? Can you do that really quickly? Can you synchronize all my data? Can you, email my customer at the right moment for them? These problems aren't new or different. They're just now more enabled at a higher scale and a lower cost than they used to be. And so, for us, there is obviously this constant existential pressure of, hey, let's test the models, let's make sure, Anthropic announced yesterday Opus 4.8. There's a team in London right now asking it every question you can imagine. And so there is this pressure to, stay on top of these things and integrate them into the product line. But fundamentally, the problems that our customers, that businesses around the world are trying to solve, they haven't changed that much with AI. It's just you now have this much more powerful tool to solve them. And so for us, our mission is we build tools that help companies grow. And now a big part of those tools is agents, and it used to be a structured workflow. Now the workflow has its own sentience and, feelings and whatever else these models have. Ask Anthropic. I'm sure there's a talk later on whether they have feelings. But
historically, CRM used to be like this massive deployment. It would take forever to install. It would be the purview of the sales team primarily. Maybe the revenue team would dip in. How has that changed? What do you see kind of the more progressive users of Attio doing in terms of how they're extending on top of what you've built, who's using it in the organization, what they're using it for? Yeah.
So I think I'll say the word AI and then talk about non-AI things, because we're going to talk about a lot of AI otherwise. But the interesting thing is the modern go-to-market team is a much more integrated thing than it used to be. So it used to be that you would have the salespeople, they would kind of cold call everyone and they would just exist. And then marketing would kind of load them and meet some lead gen number or whatever else. The best go-to-market teams we're working with today are really operating as a much more cohesive unit and are thinking in terms of systems. And systems obviously makes it easier to deploy AI, but whether there's AI involved or not, what you're trying to build is an engine of growth for your company.
Yeah.
And that will vary hugely from company to company, right? If you're reaching out to every plumber in the UK, that's a very different go-to-market motion to if you're trying to sell to airlines, where there's maybe 200 of them in the world or something. So everyone's go-to-market motion is going to look very different, but what you're trying to do is build these repeatable systems where you can reliably find, contact, and then not just close, but also support and enable your customer in the future. Like, you build a new product, who wants it? And so I think as we think about the future of go-to-market orgs and how we can best enable them, one of the things that becomes really interesting is this idea, we call it universal context, but it's how can you create a kind of shared context layer across all of your customer-facing functions, including your support team, including your account management team, your lead generation, all of that in one place, so that both humans and AI can make reasonable decisions about the customer experience you want to deliver and where that customer is in any given moment.
Yeah. It's a kind of fascinating change. And any thoughts on the kind of next 5 years and beyond, and kind of, is anyone going to be using CRM? Is it just going to be agents sitting interrogating your database? Is it going to be something else?
So I think what we're seeing today in the market and from our customers is a slightly different story to the narrative that's kind of being told outside. So what we see is really this bimodal distribution of companies. And you obviously have your kind of cracked out AI native company where everyone's using Claude and they no longer have a computer because they got a brain chip and all this kind of stuff. And for those folks, we have MCPs, we have APIs, we have CLIs, we have all this stuff. And there are definitely people who are going in this headless software direction and want to work more deeply with their tools. And I think as a software engineer, this is kind of my dream, right? Like it used to be you would stay up all night trying to debug a semicolon. Now you speak English and it does things. It's magical. But a huge chunk of our customer base sit at the other end of this spectrum, which is you're not rolling out Claude to your entire sales team. You're not saying, everyone's work is now an AI. You're actually saying, I want to have tools that I use in my business, like a CRM, like an ERP, like Slack. And for each role in the company, there's a tool where people are getting their inference, right? So a lot of our customers, for a salesperson in their organization, Attio might be the primary chat tool that they're using for their work on a day-to-day basis. They might not actually have a team Claude or ChatGPT license. They'll be using Ask Attio, which is our kind of conversational assistant, as that primary inference tool. And I think this is an interesting trend to think about in lots of different areas and industries and tools, which is, does your product have the opportunity to actually take a role as being one of these sources of the kind of interface for inference within a component of a business? And I think we will see that fragmentation of inference within a company for many businesses.
I'd like to go back to the topic around building out of the UK, out of Europe. Historically, conventional wisdom would be to build a global software company. You have to uproot and put your kind of center of gravity in California or somewhere else in the US.
Yeah.
And the only way you could get US money is by doing that as well, et cetera, et cetera. Now you've got a big US customer base, you're still in the UK, you have Redpoint and Google Ventures also on the cap table, two partners based in California. How is that possible, do you think, today? And is it scalable? Is it something everyone else here can do, or you're kind of one in a million?
No, I think it's definitely possible today. I think it's more possible than it's ever been, and I would highly recommend doing it. So I don't know if you know this, but when we did the round with you guys in Point 9 originally, the other term sheet was from a not-to-be-named US fund.
Okay.
And there were 8 of us in the team at the time, and the fund said, you will, from signing this term sheet, not even from closing the round, from signing the term sheet, you'll have 90 days to relocate the entire team to San Francisco.
Never sign that term sheet.
Don't sign that term sheet. Take it to your friendly European VC and say, hey, can you help us out? Daniel, the Balderton team, Greta, Point 9 were really great partners. They offered us the same terms. There was really no disadvantage to the European money. And we got to stay, in our city with our families, with our team. The idea that it's good for your business in the earliest days to uproot 8 people to Silicon Valley is I think, insane. But with that said, we have built this multinational company. We have a huge presence in the US. We have offices in San Francisco and New York. We're out there a lot. Yes. And I think as Europeans, we also have this tendency to confuse building a business in Europe with serving only Europe, right? So you go, well, I'm going to build my business in Europe, and my product page is going to be, I have GDPR and ISO compliance, and everyone in France is going to buy my product. And that's wonderful, but if you want to build a really globally defining software company, you need to be in the US. And that does mean, you need presence there, you need to visit regularly, you need to take it seriously as a market, but it doesn't mean you need to base your entire company and operations there.
And so how many people are you now? How many in London?
I think around 150, somewhere in that ballpark. Of that, about 100 of them are in London or the UK more broadly. Probably another 10 to 20 are in various remote parts of the European Union. And then, we have kind of, I think, 20 people in New York and 10 in San Francisco, something like that.
Yeah. And finding talent, it's fine. Well, I mean, it's never easy, I guess.
Finding talent's never easy. If anyone has a cheat code for talent, please come find me afterwards. But there is amazing talent in Europe, both in the tier 1 geographies, your kind of Londons, your Parises, your Berlins, but also kind of more distributed. And what's incredible is once you go out and find this talent, you often find that the US companies are also poking around. the amount of random engineers I found in the Czech Republic or Portugal who are also talking to Meta and Vercel is kind of very surprising.
Yeah.
And so there is incredible talent to be found in Europe. It's found at a much more attractive price point than the US, which is worth saying. And even if you pay exactly the same as the US, which by and large we do, because as I think part of building a company in Europe is to not view Europe as a backwater where you pay people less. It's like, no, we pay competitively on a global scale. But the tenures we see from our team are much longer. So of our founding engineering team, the vast majority of them are still at the company.
It's really unusual, yeah.
And in the US, that would be almost unheard of. To retain the majority of, let's say, your first 10 engineers in San Francisco, is very unlikely.
Maybe last question quickly. I was interested to learn last night you were coding at 1 a.m.
Yes.
You're the CTO, you've got a big engineering team, and I'm led to believe in the press that engineers don't do coding anymore. And I presume the CTO role won't exist in 5 years. What's the reality on the ground, and how has the CTO function changed?
It's the dying impulse of a skill
The last
set.
gasp.
No, I mean, it's entirely possible that our AI moderator next year is introducing the AI VC and the AI CTO. I hope for all of our sakes that's not quite what happens. But I think the 80-something engineers at the company might be really upset to hear me say this, but I think that applied engineering, so everyone now has the models, right? Everyone can generate code. You can all go download code. Some of you will be engineers, some of you won't be. And I think contrary to Twitter narrative, what that's actually done is make deep engineering work more valuable than ever. So there's now a kind of high watermark where certain problems are beyond the current capabilities of publicly available agents, and there's a huge amount of value in solving those problems and being the infrastructure that those agents are using to solve those problems. And so for me and for a lot of the other engineering leaders, both VPs, staff engineers, principal engineers, what's happened as we've introduced these coding agents to the company is we've become once more much more involved in the development and solving of problems. And we're able to do that because it's now much easier with these agents to keep on top of like the vast array of code and context that's happening throughout the company. Where previously you're like, well, I'm a CTO, I'm in meetings all day, I don't know what the coding standard is anymore. Well, now I don't need to. Claude knows, and I know what I need Claude. I know how I want the exact code to work, but Claude knows the coding standard or whatever. So
you're kind of liberated to solve the big problems.
Yeah,
get out of the kind of
you're liberated to do it, and it's so much more valuable than it ever has been to do it.
There we go. We hit the 0 mark on the clock. Alex, it's a pleasure working with you, and it's incredible to see what Attio has achieved in the first 5 years we've been.
Yeah, likewise.
So
thank
more
you.
to come. Thank you so much.
And thank you, everyone.
Thank you.